Welcome to a special presentation of In the Money Media, annually one of those popular shows we do. Peter Thomas Fornatale here from Louisville, Kentucky, speaking to two men on the other side of Louisville, Kentucky, in some sort of makeshift trailer studio situation. We bring in two of my absolute favorite guests. You know them from many different things. If I read the resumes, we'd be here the whole time. I'm just going to say they are an amazing broadcasting tandem who you have the pleasure of watching on NBC and NBC Sports, and their fantastic multiple award-winning coverage of the Kentucky Derby. Jerry Bailey and Randy Moss. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Good, Pete. Thanks for having us. You forgot to mention that part of this production equipment is a trash can that we have a chair sitting on top of to film this.
Hey, here.
Give us the
There
view
you go.
here. Oh,
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
very
Right.
high tech, boys.
That's
Very
it.
high tech.
That's it.
I want to get into a very important thing before we dive into this year's Kentucky Derby, talk about some of the other races as well. NBC Sports award-winning coverage. Where can people find it? Do you know your hours of operation this Friday and Saturday?
On Friday, USA Channel from 1 o'clock until 6:30. After the Oaks, stays on USA. On Saturday, May 4th, I believe Saturday is. It is on USA Channel from 12:30 to 2:30, and then it goes to NBC Big Mothership from 2:30 until after 7:15, could be all the way to 7:30.
See, my answer is always check your local listings. He has already checked the local listings, so he knows.
Weren't you in a meeting for like 6 hours today talking about this stuff?
I just looked at the program scheduling. That's all.
Well, I'm pumped to have you guys back on these airwaves. Pumped to thank. We got a couple sponsors for this video, including the Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund, KTDF, responsible for great year-round racing in Kentucky. I'm sure we'll be talking about some of the preps that happen right here in this great state. But we're going to start with the usual question, guys. And this is one that I know you fielded during the year, and I know you can't really answer for several months from now. But I want to talk about this Derby crop of horses sort of writ large. Do you feel like we're dealing with an average group, an above average group? Where does this particular horses rate in your consciousness relative to the recent Derby fields?
Go ahead.
So
I'll follow.
the short answer is what you said earlier. We really won't know until later on in the year when they run many more times. Because as Randy's pointed out already today on another broadcast, is horses run a lot less than they used to leading up to the Kentucky Derby. So there's not the body of work to judge them by that we had 20 years ago. So it's going to take till the end of the year, I think, to judge on the group of horses that we have now. But having said that, I think there's maybe 3 or 4 that are going to be really, really good horses. And the rest of it is TBD. I just don't know. They would have to develop into really good horses.
I would say that in comparison to recent years with other lightly raced fields, it looked like it was just going to be maybe an average crop, to this point, right? Until Fierceness won the Florida Derby the way he won the Florida Derby. Now, if that's going to be the fierceness that we see going forward, then I think it would be a stronger crop of 3-year-olds than we've seen in most recently.
Also, that interesting X factor, as we talked about in another video, Randy, of one of the horses in the crop being one who's yet to race on these North American shores. Maybe that's the very next question we'll go to, and I'll direct this one to Jerry since I know your answer already, Randy. Jerry, do you think this is the year we could see the supposed UAE Derby hoodoo broken? Do you think we could have a winner for the first time who made their last prep race outside of these North American shores?
No, I don't.
Told you.
So for a couple of reasons, I do think the Japanese horse, which one? Not T.O. What's the name of the other?
Forever Young.
Forever Young. He's the second fastest horse in the race by numbers, behind Fierceness. But apparently he doesn't like kickback in his face. And he's made a point to get outside horses in his last 2 races. You can't, I don't care, you'd have to be Secretariat to race outside the entire field, both turns, and still win. He's not that good, so my answer is no.
See, it's a double-pronged thing. The trainer who's a hell of a trainer. I mean, it's the same trainer that brought us Love's Only You and Marsh Lorraine, the 2 Breeders' Cup successes,
Yahagi-san.
Yeah. He is convinced, for whatever reason, that the horse does not like kickback. Now, I've gone back and watched all of his races. He got plenty of kickback a couple of times in Japan. Plenty of kickback. And ran through it and won anyway. But you'd have to think the trainer knows the horse better than we do. And he seems to be convinced that the horse doesn't like kickback. So one of 2 things, then, I guess you could say, is likely to happen. Number one, they're going to try to get him outside of the kickback, which Jerry just said is not good. Number 2, they keep him inside and he gets hit with kickback and he doesn't like it, which is not good. So, I mean, we don't really know what to expect. But he can run. We know that.
As Jerry said, as you said in the other video, some of the fastest figures. I'd love him as a long shot, but it feels like, looking at international markets anyway, he's a horse that's going to catch a lot of money. And that does give me a little bit of pause given the attendant questions when it comes to Forever Young. Would you say you're off him at this point, Randy? You do not sound as enthusiastic as the last time we spoke about it.
Well, no, I think I think he has a chance to win. I do. And I still put him in the 4 horses that I think, the top 4 horses that I think have the best chance of being Fierceness, Sierra Leone, Forever Young, and Just a Touch in that order. But the kickback thing does concern me, because that apparently is, has been guiding some of the way the horse has been ridden in races, and maybe even the way the horse is being trained. They've been training it behind kickback.
You mentioned Fierceness. Maybe we'll go there next and talk about this favorite who figure-wise stands so far above the competition. Let me ask you, Jerry, if you were riding Fierceness and you had the chance to pick your post position, which one would you pick?
Probably pretty close to the one he has. It would be on the more outer post position. But look, having said that, if Fierceness does not break and run from the starting gate, it doesn't matter what post he has. And if he does break and run, it doesn't matter what post he has. The biggest thing for Fierceness is not only for his first step to be good, but he's got to run the next 3 or 4 strides like he has in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, in the Florida Derby, and in his maiden race. Those 3 races, he not only broke well, but he accelerated away from the gate, getting his own trip in there, getting in that comfortable rhythm. Then it's all over if he does that.
Where do you stand on the post for Fierceness, Randy? I mean, is it sort of irrelevant in the way that is being implied by Jerry there?
I love it. Absolutely love it. Look, post position, I was glad to see Brad Cox quoted as saying this. I'm glad trainers are finally coming around. Post position is the most overrated part of Kentucky Derby week, right? We used to do 1-hour telecasts on ESPN and then NBC, which was like watching paint dry. It was the worst television in sports broadcasting history, the post position draw for the Derby, because not only was it boring, but it was mostly irrelevant. But with Fierceness, that was the only real drama of the post position draw, was if he's inside with all the other speed in there to the outside of him, he was going to compromise his chances. Outside is where they wanted to be and where it made the most sense to be. And that's, fortunately for Fierceness, that's where he drew. Now, about his starts, look, the way I look at it, if Track Phantom doesn't break quickly from the gate, he's screwed. If Dornick doesn't break quickly from the gate, he's in trouble. If Just a Touch doesn't break quickly from the gate, he's in trouble. The same could have been said for, a lot of the Derby winners.
Authentic.
Team
of spirit.
Yeah. Fierceness needs to get a quick start from the gate, but in that situation, he's in the same boat as a lot of other horses.
So let me pose this to you, Pete. We say that with this post 17, that's an ideal post for Fierceness. My contention is a good post like that can become a bad post, or a bad post can become a good post depending on how the horses break and the horses around you break. Let's say Fierceness missteps the first couple of steps, all right? And he gets squeezed even a little bit, but then he gets in the race. But now, by doing that, 4 or 5 horses have run up inside of him going by the wire the first time, and he's 5 wide going in the first turn. And he never has a chance to get in because you're not going to take him back from there. And you're not going to use him to go to the lead from there. It's too early. So now he's 5 wide around the next turn, and he gets beat 2 lengths. You're going to say, the wide trip cost him. Had he had an inside post, he wouldn't have been that wide. So you don't know. It depends on the break.
Back in the day, when trainers picked their own post positions, right? And it was back in the day also when there were 2 starting gates instead of 1. They were 2 14 stall starting gates replaced end to end, basically, right? And so there was a gap in between the 2 starting gates, small gap. Well, Bob Baffert one year picked the post position 14 for his horse because he liked the fact that there was a little gap there separating post 14 from post 15. He gave him a little extra breathing room, right? Loved it. Loved that post position. So they opened the gates for the Kentucky Derby, and what happened? The horse in post 15 took a left turn and angled, slammed right into Baffert's horse. And Baffert realized afterward, he said, it just gives them more time to get up momentum before they slam into my horse.
They run to daylight, these horses.
It's so subjective, yeah.
I think you guys have made the key point. You sound you all right there. It's not the Hornets aren't back, are they? It's just sun.
No.
The sun's moving, so our lighting man kind of.
I like it. The consummate professionals. You guys sound like lawyers when you tell me it depends which post position is best. But of course, you're exactly correct. One little thought I had that ties into some breaking news from today with Encino scratching and Epic Ride drawing into the field. I've heard some people say, oh, that's beneficial. Fierceness comes in a little further. I actually don't like it for him because now he has a speed horse on his outside. Is that an issue at all?
That's the first thing I told Randy when we found out that this horse, me in the Bluegrass, was up within a length and a half of the lead. The horse took him there. He wasn't sent there. So he has enough natural speed. And with the 20 post, the rider surely has to use him a little bit to get over. So I think it could be a bad thing for Fierceness, a thorn in his side, if the rider decides to use a little bit of his speed to get forward and get over going into that first turn. It can't help Fierceness.
Randy isn't buying it.
No, I agree with it. I agree with him totally. I mean, they got 2 options for Epic Ride. They can go forward, but knowing that Fierceness is there and knowing the Track Phantom's inside there and Dornick post 1, they may decide they don't want to get caught up in that kind of thing. They may decide the horse has a better chance if they just ease back a little bit, try to fill in behind the first flight. If that happens, Fierceness is fine, but it may not happen. So I totally agree.
But Pete, I'm telling you, if Fierceness breaks and runs, it doesn't matter who's out there.
Right. He'd just be faster if he runs his A race.
Yes.
I love that. I love that point. I promise we're not going to spend the whole time talking about the draw, but I do think it's worth pausing on for Sierra Leone. Had an argument with my broadcast partner, Jonathan Kinchin, about this. He doesn't think the inside draw mattered at all. Sierra Leone's coming from the back anyway. I was a little concerned that I wanted to see them maybe try to get a little bit of position going forward that now would be a dangerous tactic with all those horses coming over. From your body language, I'm thinking you're more with JK than with me. Any concerns about the draw for Sierra Leone?
So first, let me ask you, if Sierra Leone drew post 9, 10, 11, something like that, where would he want to be going into that first turn? Probably down 2 or 3, save some ground.
Or on the rail.
He's starting from there. So,
right.
Dornock's surely going to blast off and go. So drop in behind him. There's a big void behind him. And then you use, a length or 2 of his speed to get maybe a few lengths closer. But then you sit, you're very well back, and you get a good ground-saving trip in the first turn. Then you figure it out.
That seems like the definitive answer, Randy, unless you have anything to add on that.
Oh, no, I agree totally.
Let's talk about the pace of the race as a whole. There's all these horses you'd think would have to show speed, especially given the way the draw worked out. Track Phantom adding blinkers, Dornock down there. It seems reasonable to assume a runner like Teal Password might show speed just a touch. Another one who almost feels like he has to show speed. I was a little confused watching the workouts of Dornick and Track Phantom in particular, that they seemed almost like the training seemed to be geared towards reserving some speed early. How fast is this pace going to be, I guess, is the real question. Are we looking at average, fast, or slow, maybe even in this year's Derby? The metrics seem to say fast. I lean that way. This was one where Jonathan went the other way and thought it was just going to be honest at best.
To me, it looks like 22 and change, 46 and change, 110 and change. Yeah, I mean, not radioactive, not crazy fast, I think. But fast enough that it would be okay for a horse like Sierra Leone, be fast enough for a horse to come from behind, but also would give a quality stalker or front runner like Fierceness an even opportunity as well. So I don't think the pace is going to be, terribly impactful. I mean, I look for Dornick to set the pace. I think Jerry does too. and Track Phantom probably be lapped right outside of him. If Dornoch doesn't break well or doesn't have that kind of speed, then Track Phantom probably goes to the lead. But Fierceness will probably be sitting right behind him. I don't expect Just a Touch to be right in the pace mix. I think he'll probably tuck in right behind them. I don't think T.O. Password's fast enough, even if they want to put him on the lead. So that's kind of the way I see it.
The horse that controls the pace is the horse that drew in off the also eligible. If he decides to force it early and use his horse early, he forces Fierceness to use a little bit of his speed, which in turn forces the two inside horses, Track Phantom and Dornoch, to use a little bit more. And it just ramps it up another couple of lengths. Instead of being 46-2, it might be 46 flat. But I think the outside horse now determines how fast the pace will be.
If you're John Velasquez in the saddle again, Jerry, and of course I'll go right to you with this one, what do you want to be happening heading into that first turn? I mean, do you want to just outbreak these horses and go with the lead, or do you want to be in that sort of customary John Velasquez tracking trip that we've seen him execute to perfection so many times, very often on Todd Pletcher horses?
I mean, in a perfect world, I would rather be the hunter than the hunted. I would rather be just in front of the outside horse and just a length, half length, 3/4 of a length and a quarter off the first two speed horses. Now, if they don't go and they give it to me, just have a big smile on your face and take an easy first half mile. Of course, then game's over, I think.
I think what he would want to see more than anything is Dornoch to break in the air, Track Phantom to stumble at the start, Epic Ride to be taken back and toward the inside, and then you're all alone in 47-1.
I would rather see the same thing that I saw on Medina Spirit and Authentic. Nobody chase me and be able to just cruise to the lead without asking my horse for anything under his own power. And then it's game, set, match to me.
Trip sounds like a lot like the one he had in the Florida Derby. Yeah. There's a narrative out there that this horse needs the lead. I don't see it personally, having watched the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I think that both trips you guys just described would work almost equally well for this horse. It's almost like what Jerry was saying before. If the real guy shows up, isn't everybody else running for second? Is that overstating the case with Fierceness?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. The odds are yes. I still think Sierra Leone's going to run really well. And if he gets any kind of friendly trip, doesn't have to go more than 4 wide on the final turn, he's going to make a heck of a run at Fierceness. Even if Fierceness comes with his A game.
But here's, can we sound like a lawyer again, right? Here's the lawyers. Here's the thing about handicapping the Kentucky Derby in 2024. These horses are so likely raced. We don't know what the upper limit is. Okay, take a horse like Honor Marie. You look at his buyer speed figures, right? What do you get, like a 96 or so, 95, 96, whatever, in the Louisiana Derby. Okay, he's likely raced. He's working well. He's improving. If he steps forward, we don't know how much of a forward step he's got in him. He hasn't run enough to really tell us that. He might run a 107, 108 buyer. Some of these horses might have that innate potential, and they just haven't run enough to show it yet.
And the same can be said for Sierra Leone and Just a Touch, especially Just a Touch.
Unexposed, as the Brits say. We just don't know how good he is. And he's really looked terrific in his races. I want to pause for another minute on Sierra Leone, Jerry, because it sounds like you've been particularly impressed with him. What is it that you've seen from him, either on the page or on the tape, that makes you enamored of him and his chances particularly?
He's had very unfriendly trips. He's had to circle the field twice, very wide twice. He's running immature down the stretch, laying in once he gets to the lead or gets a neck in front of his competitor, and he's still winning and running by horses. And Just a Touch is a pretty nice horse. So I think if he's more mature and he's learned from those first two, he will improve naturally from that. And he's primed for a big move up. And I think he's going to have a target for longer. Now, the distraction of 150,000 people around him, maybe that distracts him as well. I don't know. But I think he gets more mature and he gets better with that.
That was my next question about him. Did the antics in the gate, in the bluegrass, give you any pause? Or is that something that he maybe, he went through it, he got over it, he ran well, maybe he doesn't have any issues with that again. But, for me, at a short price for a horse that's theoretically slower than a couple of the others, it gives me a little bit of pause, if I'm being honest.
I can find a logical explanation for what he did was, for the first time, refusing to go in the gate at Keeneland. That's the first time he's been right next to a lot of people, a lot of noise. Fairgrounds doesn't have that. Keeneland has 25,000 people, and they're all right in your face in the starting gate because you're maybe 15, 20 feet from the outer rail. So I'll give him a pass on that one. The gate up here, even though there's just 150,000 people here, the gate is at the top of the stretch away from most of the noise, and he's in the 2-post, way down low. So I don't think it's going to be a problem as it was at Keeneland.
Which is another problem with handicapping horses in the Kentucky Derby. And this one is not vintage 2024. This one goes back a century or more, right? That's a plausible explanation. Chad Brown thinks the same way. Chad asked Sierra Leone. He ain't talking.
No word from the horse's mouth.
Why he hadn't been breaking well, too. He didn't tell us.
He ain't talking. No. They're all educated horses, right? That's all we got. That's all we got.
We have opinions. The horses have the answers. They just don't tell.
Last year at this point in the show, I asked you for an interesting long shot. Jerry said right away, I think this Mage horse is pretty interesting. Comes off a better than it looked run in the Florida Derby. Ends up winning and paying $30-odd. So I got to come back to that same question for you guys. If it's not one of these horses we've been talking about who are going to be at the top of the market, is there one at a price you care to nominate, if not as an out-and-out winner, as one to include in your exotics?
Well, Randy touched on Honor Marie. He's lukewarm for me. I don't think you consider him a long shot. It's just a touch for me. He gets, to me, a really good trip right in behind the speed, if there is a lot of speed. If there's not, he's even closer. And I think a timed ride without getting chewed up in the pace like he did in the Bluegrass, I just think he's got a giant move forward in him.
I would say Honor Marie and Domestic Product would be the two horses I think would have a chance to get forward in the Superfecta at a nice price.
How's the speed figure guy picking arguably the slowest horse in the race? And if you hear my sarcasm there, Jerry, Randy, it's because I like him too. But I do find some irony in it. What is it? Why do you put him forward?
The paces of those races make the speed figures irrelevant. They can't be calculated the normal way because the final time was impacted too much by the pace. The pace was so slow in the Tampa Bay Derby, horses never had a chance to separate from each other. That's why you had so many horses right together on the wire. So Domestic Product wins it by a neck or a head or whatever it was. Who knows? If he had gotten a decent pace in a normal race, going 1.25 miles, let's say, he might have beaten those horses by 4 or 5 lengths. And he looks really good here. Big, black, beautiful horse. He's training exceptionally well. His workout against Sierra Leone was really good. And you got Chad Brown in his corner. He's well bred. There's a lot to like about the horse going forward. And I'm not saying, beating Sierra Leone or beating Fierceness, but third, fourth at a big price. Yeah, I could see that.
Brought to you by Free Reign Coffee Company. They've been powering the In the Money team throughout the Triple Crown prep season, and the coffee is fantastic. Whether you're looking for whole beans, grounds, or pods, Free Reign give you what you need to get up and get after it. And they've got subscriptions available too, so you never run out. Use our promo code MONEY20 for a 20% discount site-wide over at freereigncoffee.com.
I've got just a couple more questions for you. I do want to shout out our sponsors again, the KTDF, Kentucky Thoroughbred Development Fund. Horses running for amazing purses in Kentucky because of the work that they do. And it's a year-round racing circuit that we follow regularly over at the In the Money Media Network, not just Derby weekend, but again, year-round. You'll be hearing a lot more about them on our airwaves coming up. We'll shout out as well the Preakness Future Wager. I wore this shirt so Jerry would recognize me. That's going on this weekend, too. There's definitely some interesting opportunities this year. If you believe Fierceness is that horse, maybe you get a chance to get some equity on his Preakness price in there. If you think it's going to be all about the Baffert runners waiting in the wings, you can check that out. Just go to your ADW. There'll be a special drop down for the Preakness Future Wager. Back at it, guys, for the last few questions. And this is the big one. This is the hold the feet to the fire. No short list. I just want to hear your idea of the winner of this year's Kentucky Derby.
Fierceness. Fierceness, Sierra Leone, just a touch. It's a boring, chalky triple, but that's what I think.
Yeah.
And it could be reversed. It could be Sierra Leone Fierceness and just a touch.
And I'm just as boring as Jerry. I mean, look, the way he won the Florida Derby, he beat nothing. Okay. And he got an easy trip. We know that. And I say he beat nothing. I mean, there were some decent horses in there, horses I'd love to own. But, in terms of Kentucky Derby caliber type horses, no. But it's just, the way that he did it. And the fact that before that, 2 races before that, when he won the Breeders' Cup, he was extremely visually impressive in numbers. And he did it sitting just off another horse. So he proved that his temperament around the barn will carry over into a race, and he doesn't get high-strung. He doesn't pull. He sits there and relaxes nicely. So I think he's got a lot of quivers, a lot of arrows in the quiver, and I think that makes him definitely the worst to beat.
Got to have at least a thought on the Kentucky Oaks. This is the feature for Friday. You guys will be covering it on NBC.
Oh yeah.
It looks like a contentious race this year. I'm curious if you guys have strong opinions or if you think it's as open as it might appear on paper.
So we go back a year. Randy texted me like 2 weeks before the Kentucky Derby, maybe right before we left to get on a plane to come here. And he said, I got the winner of the Turf Classic, the race before the Derby. And I said, I know who it is. It's Up to the Mark. He said, yes, it's Up to the Mark. Well, we did something similar this year for the Oaks, and we both came with the same horse.
Torpedo Anna.
Interesting.
And Oaklawn Park was, to me, the most visually impressive prep of any of the fillies coming into the Oaks. And then we find out that she had some kind of hip injury before the fantasy that cost her about 6 weeks. And she was only 80% that day. With that kind of race, I like her even more.
Now, for wagering purposes, look, Tarifa is the program favorite. I don't know if she's actually going to be the actual betting favorite, but let's say she is. And nothing wrong with Tarifa. I mean, she looked good when she won the Fairgrounds Oaks. It's a fantastic, prep along with Rachel Alexander historically for the Kentucky Oaks. Nothing wrong with Tarifa at all. But the Oaks has gotten now way tougher than we thought it was going to be back in January and February when all of the talk about the 3-year-old fillies were, why are they so slow? What's wrong with the 3-year-old fillies this year? Then all of a sudden, all these final prep races, you're like, wow, whoa, look at this, look at that, right? So I do think Torpedo Anna is the horse to beat. I agree with Jerry that she deserves top billing, but not by much, because Ways and Means is set up to run an exceptional race, right? And so is Just FYI. She was the best horse in the Ashland. There was a rail bias that day. She was wide on both turns. She still ran very well to finish second behind Leslie's Rose, who benefited from the rail bias. So I could see any one of those 3 horses winning, but there's your trifecta.
I love it. What about other races on the 2 days? Last year we talked about some of the interesting storylines. We did talk Up to the Mark. We, of course, talked about Cody's Wish. Maybe each give me one race you're particularly looking forward to, either from a coverage or wagering point of view.
I didn't bring my book with me with all the races, so I might overlook something.
Best undercard ever.
Yeah.
It's a Breeders' Cup level undercard.
The Churchill Downs is a very tough, it's a sprint race, very tough to calculate. We don't have any standouts this year. But Randy and I both ended up on the same horse talking about this. And it's the horse that Wayne Lucas's Track Mate.
Never run in a stakes before. And, he's going to be a pretty good price, I think. He might be 6-1, 8-1 in there. And it's visually very impressive in his last. So from a wagering perspective, that might be one of the highlights. But
interesting filly in the Unbridled Sydney, which is the first race on Friday that we cover. It's like this 5th or 6th race, something like that. Overcharged. It's a filly from Louisiana. She's as fast as they come. She's a bullet. She's run against horses outside Louisiana once and didn't do well, but I'm looking forward to seeing her run.
The Old Forester Bourbon Turf Classic, the race right before the Kentucky Derby, is spectacular. You've got I'm Very Busy, who might be the best turf horse in America right now, based on the way he ran in the Mervyn Muniz, going up against Godolphin and Charlie Appleby in Naval Power. You've got Program Trading, another Chad Brown horse that he thinks is just about as good as I'm Very, Very Busy.
And Fletcher's horse, who was the only speed horse in the race.
Yeah,
not surprising.
Not surprising. And you've got Integration, who is a very, very strong horse as well.
Oh, we have to tell you, Pete, we're expecting rain this weekend. So the condition of it is going to play a lot into how these horses run. Some may like it with a little cut in the ground, some may not. So it all depends on how much moisture we get between Friday and Saturday.
The 8 Bells is a heck of a race between two Brad Cox trainees at the top of the market, Denim and Pearls and Impel. Denim and Pearls ran like a freak last time out when they backed her down to one turn. The Derby City Distaff, you get a rematch between Vava and Alva Star with some other really good horses thrown in there as well. I'm telling you, the American Turf is a great race for 3-year-old turf horses.
It's like a Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, it's really, really something to look forward to.
Well, the great news is, Jerry mentioned about the weather. You guys will be covering it live. People will be able to tune in, watch, get all the latest up-to-date insights following the fantastic award-winning NBC coverage. Guys, this was a half hour that absolutely flew by. Can't thank you enough, especially for the crack production skills, finding the light, avoiding the hornets, positioning the computer on the chair. This was grade one producing and on-air talent from a team who's no stranger to either of those things. Thank you, boys.
We won't need makeup after all this, son.
And I was prepared. If a hornet came by, I was just going to slide him over in this direction.
Great stuff.